friends, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another TBR video. For April's TBR, I'm actually going to be using the wheel spinner instead of the TBR prompts. So I've already gone through and I've added all of the books that are on my physical TBR to a wheel spinner. So instead of the prompts choosing what I read in April, it's going to be entirely made up of whatever I end up spinning, which I will say is a little more terrifying because at least with the prompts, I kind of get some say in like choosing what I want to read based off of the prompt. But with the wheel spinner, I feel like I have absolutely no say because it's whatever I spin, that's the book that's going on my TBR. But either way, I'm definitely excited to see what we end up spinning for April's TBR. And real quick, this is how I did with my TBR for March. There was only one book that I didn't get to, and it was honestly just because I wasn't in the mood for a classic last month, so I didn't end up getting to Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. But either way, I ended up reading 4 out of 5 books off of my March TBR, which I feel like is pretty good for me, so I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm definitely excited to see what I get for my April TBR. So let's go ahead and do the first spin. Okay, right off the bat, the wheel is being so kind to me. The first book that it gave me is The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss, and I've honestly been wanting to jump back into this book ever since I finished the first one, which was The Name of the Wind. I feel like I've talked about that book so many times on my channel, and that's because I absolutely loved it. Like, that was a 5-star book for me, and I'm so excited to jump back into this one. The world building and the setup of the first book was so immersive, and I absolutely loved everything about it. So I've been wanting to jump back into this book for quite some time. It is kind of a longer one, but I'm honestly not upset about it whatsoever. It also has one of my favorite magic systems, which is alchemy-based magic. I think this book honestly picks up right where The Name of the Wind left off. So Kavoth is still telling us his life story, and I think in this one we get to see more of how he went from like a magical, gifted, reckless student to like more of a legend. And I think in this one, the world kind of expands a lot. So I'm expecting a lot of world building and adventure and storytelling and magic. I feel like it's going to be so immersive because the first book was so immersive. And just the way that this author writes, it seriously just brings to life this world to me. I also don't think it's going to be very plot heavy. I feel like it's going to be more rich in like experiences and world building. I have heard mixed things about this one. Some people love how expansive the world building is in this book, and other people kind of feel like it drags. So I think it's really just going to depend on my mood. But if I'm in the mood for this book and I'm locked in on it, I could definitely see this being a 5-star easily. So let's go ahead and do the second spin. This is a book that I have been meaning to get to for so long. So the second book that we ended up getting for April's TBR is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I have been meaning to get to this book for a very long time. I honestly have no idea what it's about, but I have a very beautiful copy and I've heard so many good things about this book. The back just has a quote on it, but from what I could find online, this one is about a young woman who overcomes a difficult childhood to become a governess, and then she forms a complicated relationship with her employer while uncovering secrets about his past. I think it also has like a gothic vibe to it, and from what I've heard, it has a strong female main character. So I'm definitely excited for it. I'm a little nervous because it is a bit of a longer one, but I know that this is like a solid classic that everybody loves, so I'm definitely excited to read it. But I know that classics sometimes can feel slower and more dense, but I've never read anything by Charlotte Bronte, so I'm hoping that I connect to her writing and that the writing doesn't feel slow and dense to me. But super excited for this one. So book number 2 is Jane Eyre, just a classic gothic romance. So definitely excited for that one. Hopefully I can get to it in April. I'm really hoping that we get some more romances on my April TBR, preferably from like this middle shelf, because those are like my spring summer romances and I've really been wanting to dive into those recently. So let's go ahead and do the third spin and see what we get. Oh, it was so close to the book that I wanted. Okay, so the third book we got is The Storied Life of A.J. Fickery by Gabrielle Zevin. I have heard so many good things about this book, although I don't really know what it's about. I know that our main character owns a bookstore and he's kind of like going through a rough period. I believe his wife died and he's kind of grieving his wife, and his bookstore's just not really doing very well, and he ends up kind of isolating himself and his life just starts to feel kind of stagnant. But then I believe something happens that kind of changes the trajectory of the story, so I'm definitely excited to see what this one is like. I haven't read anything by Gabrielle Zevin, but I've heard really good things about majority of her books, so I really want to see what her writing is like. Also, it's a fairly short book. It's about 250 pages, which definitely needs some shorter books when the two books that I have are so big. So I think this one is going to be super cozy and emotional. I also love books about books. Like, bookstores and books are one of my favorite things. I feel like that's so cozy and I really drawn to that, and I really love that in my books. So I'm super excited to see what Gabrielle Zevin's writing is like, because I've heard so many good things about her writing and about her books. So that is the third book for my April TBR. But let's go ahead and do the fourth prompt. I'm still hoping for some cozy romances. Ooh. The fourth book that I ended up getting is a literary fiction book called Mating by Norman Rush, and I really don't know anything about this book. It has been on my TBR for years. It does have a National Book Award though, but from what I could find online, it says that this follows an unnamed American woman who travels to Botswana after finishing her graduate studies, kind of drifting and trying to figure out what she actually wants out of life. And while she's there, she meets this man named Nelson D. Noon, and it says that she is both drawn to him and his ideas, and she kind of gets pulled into his world. From there, their story really becomes about the relationship intellectually, emotionally, and physically, and how it intersects with bigger questions about power, gender roles, independence, and what it actually means to build a perfect society. That actually sounds pretty interesting. It sounds very thought-provoking in my opinion. It definitely sounds very character-driven, and it sounds like we're going to be getting a lot of like her inner monologue and her inner thoughts, kind of just like her unpacking everything and figuring out what she wants out of her life, which I do enjoy that type of writing depending on my mood. I feel like if I'm in the mood for it, I think I'll appreciate it a lot more and find it to be way more brilliant. But if I'm not in the mood for that type of writing, I feel like I'll find it dense and harder to get through. So I feel like my mood is heavily going to impact my reading experience on this one. But regardless, this is a book that has been on my TBR for a long time, so I'm definitely excited to read this one. There's also like a lot of like praise from articles on the cover. The one on the front is from the New York Times, and it says, "Exhilarating, vigorous, and luminous. Few books evoke so eloquently the state of love at its apogee." So that makes me more excited to want to jump into this one. So that is the fourth book that I ended up getting for my April TBR. And before we do our last spin, I'm not gonna lie, my April TBR is feeling pretty heavy at the moment. I have straight literary fiction, an epic fantasy, and a classic. So if I do not get a fluffy romance on this last spin, there is a book on my physical TBR that I think I'm just gonna go ahead and add to April's TBR as well, because I honestly cannot survive without a fluffy romance on my TBR. So let's go ahead and do the last spin, and if I do not get a fluffy romance, there is a book on here that I will 100% be putting on my April TBR as well. Let's see what we get for the last spin. No! We literally got another literary fiction. It's okay. It's okay, because that means that I get to pick the fluffy romance that I want, and I already know which one it is. So the last book that we ended up getting off of the wheel was The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. First of all, that cover is so intriguing, but I'm honestly not really sure what this book is about, so I'm just gonna read the back to you real quick. It says, "On a brisk autumn day in 1686, 18-year-old Nella Ortman arrives in Amsterdam to begin a new life as the wife of illustrious merchant trader Johannes Brandt, but her splendid new home is not welcoming. Johannes is kind yet distant and leaves Nella alone with his sister, the fearsome Marin. Nella's life unexpectedly changes when Johann presents her with an extraordinary wedding gift, a cabinet-sized replica of their home. To furnish it, she engages the services of an elusive and enigmatic artist whose tiny creations mirror their real-life counterparts in eerie ways. Johann's gift helps Nella pierce the closed world of the Brandt household, but as she uncovers its unusual secrets, she begins to understand and fear the escalating dangers around them. Only one person seems to see the fate that awaits them. Is the miniaturist the key to their salvation, or the architect of their destruction?" Okay, wait, what? That actually sounds so good. It sounds like it's got like a historic gothic vibe to it, but then like that underlying mystery sounds so good. This one sounds like it's gonna be a moody slow burn. I'm hoping that I get lost in the setting. I've always loved Amsterdam, so I love reading about books in Amsterdam, but that just sounds so good. The setting of the household just sounds so unique, and it sounds like there's gonna be so much tension in this household. And I normally don't like historical books, but that one actually really has me intrigued. So that is the last book that I ended up spinning for my April TBR. It is The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. I think it's also a debut novel. Washington Post on the back said, Burton gives her narrative the propulsive drive of a thriller, but her distinctive prose conveys deeper, harder answers than a whodunit. This fine historical novel mirrors the fullness of life in which growth and sorrow inevitably are mingled. So yeah, I am definitely intrigued by this one. So real quick, let's go over the 5 books that The Wheel ended up giving me for my April TBR. We have Mating by Norman Rush. And then we have The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. We have Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. The Storied Life of A.J. Fickery by Gabrielle Zevin. And then The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss. I started this video off by saying that The Wheel is being kind to me, and then it gave me 3 literary fictions back to back, and then a gothic romance classic. So don't know how I'm feeling about The Wheel right now. Our relationship's a little more love-hate than love at the moment, but I am gonna go ahead and pick out a fluffy romance book that I've been wanting to get to for a while, and I was really hoping that I would end up spinning it, but I didn't, so I'm just gonna add it to my April TBR anyways, because there is absolutely no way that I finish my April TBR when it's straight like classics and like heavier reads. Okay, so the romance book that I'm adding to my April TBR is The Rulebook by Sarah Adams. This is the sequel to The Cheat Sheet, and I absolutely love that book. I thought it was so fun and just such an easy, quick read. This is also just screaming like spring summer romance to me, which is exactly what I've been craving recently. And the story follows 2 people who dated in college and then ended up going their separate ways, but our FMC ends up being his sports agent because he's in the NFL. And I think that the story is just gonna follow them kind of reconnecting and rehashing whatever happened in the past. I think we're gonna get to see a lot of like unresolved feelings and tension, which always makes for the best banter in my opinion. So I think the story follows them kind of rediscovering their connection and then also confronting like whatever happened in the past with their history. I'm really looking forward to this one. I feel like it's gonna be a really fun, lighthearted romance, but also with enough like emotional depth to make me care about the characters. I'm also expecting a lot of witty banter, especially with them being exes. I feel like the banter is going to be so good in this book. So that is the last book on my April TBR. It is The Rulebook by Sarah Adams, and I cannot wait to jump into this one and kickstart my summer romance reading. Here are the 6 books that are on my April TBR. From here down is so daunting and heavy, and then we have this one like colorful spring fluffy romance. So definitely an interesting lineup of books for my April TBR. And like I said in the beginning, with the wheel spinner, I have basically no say in what I pick. So these are the 6 books that are on my April TBR. If you have read any of these books, I would love to hear your thoughts on them. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. And if you enjoyed hanging out with me today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more bookish videos. Bye!